Let's unravel Gita's world. Hello and welcome. This is the 95th episode of Gita's World. Geeta and I are here. How are you, Geeta?
Very well. How are you, Anna?
I'm good. I'm just waiting for like 5 more weeks to go and then we'll be cutting cake here.
Yes, absolutely.
Am I being treated by you?
Absolutely. We're still
Lovely.
waiting.
Yes. So, Geeta, last time we were discussing something like really peaceful. Peace summit between Russia and Ukraine, although it was a failed attempt, clearly. This time we are...
No, we were not talking peace. We were talking about attempts to peace during war. So we were still discussing war.
Well, yeah, because that's actually very prevalent and still persists. And this time we are sort of going inside Russia because there are actually certain provinces, certain areas, which I actually did not know about. When you said that we'll be discussing something, I was like, okay, where's this region? So I had to really understand. I'm sure many listeners and viewers will be tuning in, to this episode, would not be knowing about this, but trust me, it's very interesting, and I'm sure Geeta will weigh in. It's actually about this area called Dagestan. It's the region in Russia, which has, there were actually, there was an attack in two provinces, in two areas of this Dagestan region. So I'll just give a short brief. So there were 4 gunmen who launched coordinated attacks on 2 churches, a synagogue, and a police post in Russia's Dagestan region. So far, at least 19 police and National Guard officers, several civilians, and an Orthodox priest have been killed. Several others injured. This is according to Russian authorities' data. So there are 2 cities, Derbent and Makhachkala, in the Dagestan region. This is the area where the attacks have taken place. So authorities have reported that 5 attackers of these attacks have been eliminated. The Russia's investigative committee, they have said that they have opened criminal investigations into these acts of terror. Although the attackers have not been identified, no terror organization has claimed responsibility, unlike the last Crocus City Hall attack, where I think in just hours after the attack, the ISIS claimed responsibility, right? So we'll get into these attacks. I mean, what exactly were these incidents about? What is this region? Because considering it's a predominantly Muslim republic and it's one of Russia's poorest regions. So what makes it, really prone to such attacks? Because it has its history. So let's explore this. So first, Geeta, what do we know so far? What's the situation on the ground? Because like I said, nobody has claimed responsibility considering the region has been targeted by Islamic militants. So do you think, in your opinion, do these attacks follow a pattern of, these designated terror attacks?
I don't think it follows a pattern because the previous attack was primarily to do with Ukraine, and therefore the connections were made to Ukraine and not otherwise. The terrorists who had survived were escaping. They were caught later, but were escaping across the border to Ukraine. In this case, it's a very different scenario altogether. The fact that like you rightly said, Dagestan is a republic within the Russian territory that is predominantly Muslim. I think Sunni Muslim. Yeah. And so there have been, even last year after the October attack by Hamas in Gaza and following the response of Israel, there have been incidents of violence in the region. There have been threats to the Jewish community there. So I think this attack is very specific to, although there are some intelligence officers in Russia who would like to pin the blame to Ukrainian intelligence, and Ukrainian intelligence agencies. But and while there could be a provocation there, you're not saying that there isn't. But the fact is that this is not that. This is very specific. Even in Crocus City Hall, the ISIS and ISIS-K had claimed responsibility. But the fact that they were trying to connect it to Ukraine, this specifically, I think, has to do with the Jewish community.
Okay.
If you look at both the attacks, it's 120 kilometers apart. The 2 cities, Makhachkala, which is the capital city of Dagestan, and Derbent. But in both the places, primarily they were targeting synagogues, Jewish community. Of course, church and police posts also have been targeted. But the fact that it did look like a coordinated attack, although we do not know whether they were from which group, or is there a group that is claiming responsibility this time around.
Yeah.
But this looked like a coordinated attack, 120 kilometers, that's 75 miles apart. And they were targeting a certain community. So safe to say that, the Israel-Hamas war could be the premise of these attacks.
The anti-Semitic.
Yes. Although nobody has claimed responsibility and the investigations are underway. So they've also not come out and said, some of the reports suggest that some intelligence officers are saying that this is provoked by Ukrainian intelligence.
But is there a particular reason behind? Because as far as I studied, the Washington D.C. based Institute for the Study of War has noted that the Russian branch of ISKP's Al Azam Media, they had praised their, I'm putting it in quotes, their brothers from the Caucasus for demonstrating capabilities in Dagestan. So ISW stated that Al Azim did not claim credit for the attack itself, notably, and the reference to the Caucasus strongly suggests that ISIL's Northern Caucasus branch is responsible. I mean, it's alleged, but they're saying it's responsible for the attack. But like you said last time when the Crocus, the City Hall attack happened, ISIS was quick to say that, okay, we did it. I mean, we claim responsibility. But, I mean, is there a particular reason that
they were also caught. They were caught. There was no escape. Over here, I think they're not taking responsibility, but I think the Russian intelligence will come out with details on who's responsible, irrespective of whether if somebody takes responsibility or not. And the fact that the ISIS-K has already come out and congratulated and has celebrated this. So suffice to say that there could be a connection that will be drawn. But for now, there are no details that have come out.
Right.
Although, if you go back to the attack, this is one of the most severe attacks in recent times because we saw the Crocus attack. And that was also quite a shock for Russia. But this time around, we're looking at...
But that was actually very well timed because that was the time when Putin was clinching his third presidency.
That, and also, look, they wanted to make a spectacle of the event. And so they ensured that it is a public arena. It is a hall that, would have a lot of people over the weekend. Right. And therefore, the attack took place and such. Here, I think the messaging is more about who they're targeting and not how many. Synagogue burned to the ground.
Yeah. I mean,
Jewish community attacked.
Yeah.
Brutal killing of a priest, a Jewish priest, clearly shows the message that they wanted to drive across. The Israel-Hamas war, where we're seeing, and it's ironical in a way, Anna, because in this Israel-Hamas war, Russia has played a very different kind of a role, where Russia has a lot of engagement with Jews.
Yeah.
There are so many Russians who are Jew. Yeah. Most of the top billionaires in Russia are Jew. There's major connect between Russia and Israel. But when it comes to the war, they've taken a position where killing of civilians is unacceptable. So in a way, they're siding with or standing with China at the United Nations and internationally.
Yeah. Right.
So that's very, very important that Russia is today, we cannot say right side or wrong side of history, but not standing with the West when it comes to supporting Israel. And despite that, the Muslim areas within Russia are facing a lot of tensions.
Yeah. How ironic.
So it is ironic, Anna, while, there is a position that Russia has taken and they should understand what Russia's position is. But if you come down to living in a society where there is the Jewish community and in a way there have been problems, you see, where the Jewish community might be siding with Israel or saying that Hamas is the terrorist group, so on and so forth. And you had clashes that had left 10 people injured at the Uytash airport, and some of them were waving Palestinian flags there. So there are incidents in pockets that have happened already for the authorities to know that this could be an area of stress and tension. But it would flare up is something that I don't think they had imagined. Or they should have, because then there has to be, because there's so many, now we're looking at it. It was not coming to us earlier, but now we're looking at the reports that are coming in where security guards had been placed outside local synagogues ever since an anti-Semitic mob stormed through the local airport in October.
Yeah.
And then again, clashes where 10 persons were injured. Airport attack came amid rising public anger. These reports are coming now. And so if these things were happening, I think the bigger question would be, was there a lapse in intelligence and in security? Because this is a major attack. You've lost security personnel. You've lost community members. And property has been damaged and razed to the ground, whether it's a synagogue, a church, or a police post.
Definitely, yeah. I think while we're at it, like the fact that there's a local municipal official, his name is Magomed Omrao, and he was detained following reports that 2 of his sons were among those who carried out these attacks. So it means that the state apparatus has also been like penetrated by these, Islamic fundamentalists, as they say.
I think it's the other way around. Because what children do doesn't always, parents don't always know. And while they're officials, it happens a lot in the case of India, where we have so many public servants who were there in Kashmir, did not know that their sons were involved in terrorism or were part of a terrorist organization or a militant group or an armed group, So they don't know. It's just that where the indoctrination is happening, who is influencing these children, what are the videos that are coming from Israel-Hamas war that they're being shown to say, well, we need to avenge the deaths, take revenge for the deaths. So this was not a peaceful protest. What we're seeing in US are protests asking for their own government to stop. But here they've taken it, onto themselves to carry out action, and that certainly is not acceptable. I remember there was an incident, the Butler House encounter, and we had one from our own fraternity whose younger brother was killed in the attack, and he did not know that his brother was a part of a Mujahideen organization. So it's just saying that this is not penetration into the system. Penetration into the system would be if the sons were involved and the father was relaying intelligence, information, and saying, okay, this is how you plan it, this is how you do it.
He's been detained, so we don't really know.
He's been detained. Everybody in Russia who has connection with anybody involved would be detained. Like in the Crocus attack, the man who had rented the house out was in bigger trouble because he was detained saying, how did you, on what basis did you rent the house out to these fellows? So anybody who was involved or was connected or was in touch in any country would be questioned, but in Russia it just becomes a little more severe. So yes, the detention could lead to harsh questioning, and by harsh I mean
we remember after the Crocus Hall attack, we saw the pictures of all those terrorists who were nabbed and their ears were like, it was purely torture. It was purely torture.
And even the gentleman who had given his apartment on rent, he was also picked up and he didn't look. So he's been detained. Let's see whether he is connected or not. But right now to call it penetration would be... And I don't think the attack and the modus operandi and how it was carried out required penetration as such. It's just about the ammunition And where did they get the ammunition from? Which is also not very difficult in Russia.
Also the access, and I think it's better if we could understand this Dagestan region and the nearby regions as well, because as far as I could understand, Dagestan is a mountainous region. And like I say, it's one of Russia's poorest regions and predominantly Muslim republic. It has a history of unrest, particularly during the 1990s and early 2000s. And several reports have noted that between 2007 and 2017, the jihadist organization Caucasus Emirate carried out attacks in Dagestan and the nearby republics of, for example, Chechnya. But the region has experienced a decline in violence over recent years. Unlike Chechnya, of course, which endured, two brutal wars with Russian forces during the same period. But Dagestan did not specifically see conflict in those areas, on the same scale as, unlike, Chechnya did. And like you were mentioning, Dagestan has also reported an increase in the number of anti-Semitic incidents, like last year about the airport, a mob in the mostly, Muslim regions storming the airport, looking for Jewish passengers arriving from Israel. So, like, if the reports are suggesting that violence has declined in recent years, so why now suddenly then? And after years, then is it like you mentioned, the Israel-Hamas
See, the trigger
war?
is not internal. Now, all the background that you've given has to do with the Chechnya Russia conflict, and while Kadyrov now is a friend and ally of Putin, that he was a better-known an enemy of Putin when he wanted to separate. Now he's okay being a part of Chechnya, being a part, and he being an ally of Russia and Putin. But that happened much later, So that's why that conflict is very different. And they did see a lot of conflict between the Muslim, state there and the Russian state. But this one has a trigger. It's not a trigger that is internal in nature. The fact that Jews were targeted, the trigger is outside of Russia. And while they're calling it a vile provocation, we will have to wait and see what the response of the state is going to be. Now, you're talking about the lay of the land,
Right.
and access to Dagestan, which is a mountainous region, which is correct. And accessing it from outside would be difficult. But if I understand correctly, the youngsters who were part of this entire mission were from within Dagestan, not outsiders. So they, in fact, knew the lay of the land very well. They knew exactly where to go. It was so coordinated that they knew that it's 75 kilometers apart, and they were targeting the city of Derbent and the capital city, and in a coordinated manner around the same time. So they knew exactly what to carry out, where and when.
Right, yeah.
And which are the buildings that have to come under target, that have to come under their attack. So I think it was coordinated. It had a very specific trigger, which I think is the Israel-Hamas war.
Yeah.
It had a very specific community, which are the Jews.
Yeah.
There are others also who got impacted. And it is an insider's job too, with a huge influence from outside maybe, but an insider's job, meaning the people involved did not cross the border and come in.
Okay.
So because the incidents happened before this also, and the situation in this part was tense in bits and pieces of the time period after October 7th, there should have been more intelligence in terms of if there is a plan to destabilize. Now, just ahead of elections, I'm giving you an example. There are various reports that have already come in that there could be an attack in the United States of America. And they're seeing that the Israel-Hamas war is causing a lot of rift and tension, that there are a lot of people within US who are not happy with what's happening. And election is around the corner. So they're already putting out alerts that, be aware, be alert. Security agencies need to be absolutely aware, pick up all the chatter. So I think over here, while it should come as a huge shock, but I think something about the intelligence is amiss, because there were so many incidents that took place before this attack.
No, actually, Geeta, in 2017, I'm just focusing a bit on this region because in 2017, Russia had officially declared that these uprisings within this region, Dagestan region, they were defeated. But now, does this now indicate that Russia will sort of lose control over this region, considering that, we were speaking of Chechnya, where a decade of war, black market, weapons sales, and poverty, they have actually bred, extreme lawlessness. And Chechen rebels, if you see, they have staged numerous forays into Dagestan. They work along Dagestani insurgents and vice versa as well. Uh, the point I'm coming at is that it means, do you think it means that the tide of Islamist terror is not new in Russia? And this is the time, because this was the time when, I was going through 1998 and 2005 reports, and there were almost similar kinds of incidents happening at that point. Synagogues being targeted, churches being targeted, you know and this was a time when Putin has actually clinched its presidency for the first time around in 1998. But like what I was reading is several observers, they're saying that Russia is not able to manage this tide here now is because security forces are engaged in the war in Ukraine. But that can't be true, right? It's happening for such a long time. It's not, Ukraine is something like really fresh.
No, so they are pressed, but they're not pressed to the extent that they don't have police forces. This is an internal security situation. It does not require military force. So this making this comparison that they did not have enough manpower because I don't think is correct. They still have a very strong contingent of police across Russia. If you travel, you'll realize that it's a very strong contingent of police that they have across Russia, including Dagestan. In fact, if anything, we have seen the Putin administration ensure that there's peace that prevails in Dagestan, despite all the tensions that have been there. And the Derbent synagogue, which was built in 1914, after the rededication of in 2010 as Kilinamaz for the Muslim community who's also there, the mountain Jews, almost 30,000 of them, had left Dagestan after the breakup of Soviet Union in 1989. They moved to Israel.
Yeah.
So, which is why I say there's a huge connection of Jews from Israel and Russia, because a lot of them have family ties. And despite that, Russia has taken a position and a stand on the Israel-Hamas war. So it has to do with geopolitics. It has to do with the fact that they're now an anti-West force, all of that and more. But they have. So over here, to say that the Russian side did not look at the tensions, I don't think would be correct. And also the fact that they had enough police contingent, and they have been looking at the Muslims who are actually quite a disenfranchised and a persecuted lot in many other parts, including China, Uyghur Muslims.
Yeah.
That's not the case over here in Russia as much.
Okay.
It's not the case. They live in Dagestan the way they have to. In Chechnya, in fact, they live quite comfortably now. Although I will not celebrate the chief's rule there, Kadyrov's rule there.
Yeah.
But
it's not like they have been, there's no ghettoization of.
No, not really. But again, they're concentrated for sure in Dagestan.
Considering, there were two brutal wars.
Yeah. And there still exists the mountain Jews in a smaller number. And which is why I think they became a major target of, and it is the outcome of what is happening a little far away between Israel and Gaza.
Yeah. Right. I think just before quickly we go, we have spoken about this and, previously about Russia as a whole and how it's as a, Putin as a so-called leader and a dictator. And like you mentioned as well that, after the Crocus Hall attack in March, there were Russian authorities who just like hastily blamed Ukraine and the West despite the IS group claiming responsibility. There was no evidence that the Ukrainians or NATO or the West would be, held responsible, but Russia did that. And this time, too, Russian officials, they quickly moved to try to portray the attacks as a provocation by, outside forces such as the US and NATO, despite ample evidence of, homegrown terrorism. But what is this? I mean, I just want to understand that President Putin, he has been so adamant that Russia cannot be the target of terrorist attacks by Islamic fundamentalists, highlighting Russia's unique example of interfaith harmony and interreligious and interethnic unity. This stance persists despite there were several reports that the FSB, which is Russia's domestic security service, they recently thwarted an IS plot to attack a Moscow synagogue. So what explains this reluctance to acknowledge that, the presence of Islamic fundamentalists and the underlying resentment among Muslim conservatives in Russia?
I think it's because the Russian administration never wants to be on the back foot. They had claimed long ago that it is done and it is over. I think they're still reeling under that because they suffered a lot. I mean, faced a lot. They faced a lot during the Chechnya conflict.
Yeah.
So I think they have said in the past that it's not the case. But now I think the Patriarch Kirill of the Russian Orthodox Church, he actually came out and said that this happened on when the church was observing the Pentecost Day. And so it is basically an attack on interreligious harmony and peace that we see in Russia. And then President Putin, while offering condolences, really did not come out and say what and details of the attack. So yes, I think there is a reluctance in accepting, but also investigations have not cleared up anything. Like in the Crocus attack, massive attack it was. The ISIS claimed responsibility, and there was acknowledgement that yes, this terror group has claimed responsibility. But in terms of a rise in Islamic fundamentalism, as such, I don't think Moscow will be making an official statement, yes, that certainly has become a problem. They will look into the case, there will be investigations, and I suppose the motive would be attributed to what they've seen in between Israel and Hamas. Having said that, nothing justifies the killing of innocent people, so let's wait and see what the actions are going to be for now. Staying true to to standing in solidarity with the people of Dagestan, a 3-day mourning has been announced, 24th, 25th, 26th. Flags will fly in half-mast. Cultural events have been cancelled across Dagestan. So this is messaging. This is Russia saying we stand with the people. And once they have a lead on anyone alive who's responsible, because they have taken down and neutralized those who were there, right?
Yeah.
So anyone alive and responsible for this attack,
we'll
hear from Russia more on what really happened.
Muslims account for like 6 or 7%.
It's a small number.
It's a small number,
and
right?
concentrated. In places.
So
you will not find them everywhere.
Yeah.
But concentrated in places.
Yeah. So lastly, when we discussed Crocus, there were several observers who said that, Russia should be aware because there are more attacks to happen. And we saw such,
Yes.
Right. So you really think now Russia is still vulnerable and we can see
I think Russia is vulnerable. You're right. I think Russia is quite vulnerable. I also think that that they should be more aware of what's happening, pick up more chatter. And this is not the end of the attacks that we're seeing within Russia. So they should look at, this ISIS and ISIS-K targeting Russia. And there could be more in the future as well, because this is not going to stop anytime soon. And
the denial is not doing any good.
No, not doing them any good. But I think it is not particularly to do with whether if there's a rise of fundamental extremism in the name of Islam or not. That might come about. I think for now, for them, the biggest problem is that they, one, are fighting a war. Some of it is reaching now Russian territory, earlier Ukrainian, that's Crimea. Crimea came under attack. And so they will be fighting a multi-pronged war. One is within, because certain groups are unhappy. And they find, and maybe they were unhappy with the administration in the past itself. So now they're finding an opportunity and a window to do what they're doing. And on the other hand, they have a real depleting of resources, crunched resources, and yet fighting a war which could be prolonged. So for Putin, the challenges now are many.
Although
if this internal drift continues, then they will have a lot to pay. The cost is very high of having an internal, have internal tensions and be fighting a war at the border.
Already being ravaged by a war with Ukraine, but a war in the Middle East and Israel, Gaza is seeping through Russia. Despite,
in fact, Crimea also has a significant Muslim population, the Tatars. I traveled to Crimea and I went to, it's a beautiful place. They have a beautiful palace and all of that, but quite integrated into the Russian society. So again, you're integrated, yet you're questioning. You have people who are being indoctrinated. It's a problem that Putin will have to see as an immediate challenge.
Right. So I think we'll put an end to the conversation, Geeta. That explained, really trying to understand, these differences within Russia. I think it was very interesting to me, considering we just, we don't really get to know all
not
these
many people
nuanced.
knew. In fact, not many people even knew that Russia has Muslims.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that Russia has a Muslim population, except for those who understand Chechnya. That there is a Dagestan that exists.
Right.
Or Tatars in Crimea.
Or Tatars,
So,
I hope, those who, stayed till the end would have definitely learned a thing or two from this episode. So do let us know what you thought about it and send in your feedback on 8588966996, or you could email us on pods@indiatoday.com. Thank you so much, Geeta.
thank you, Anna, and thank you for watching.